Hi, I'm Michael with Huggins Dreckman Insurance, here to talk to you about your insurance needs. Huggins Dreckman has been selling insurance for many years now. We've been with Marshall Reddick for over 20 years, and I have been in property management and real estate for the last 20 years.
And I'm Stan Dreckman, Huggins Dreckman Insurance. As Michael said, we do insurance. I have a whole lot of background in insurance, and we're here to help you learn a little bit about landlord insurance, 1 to 4 unit homes.
So basically the purpose of getting your insurance is to cover your assets. So if something does happen, you'll be able to replace your home or your landlord property. Also, if there's any catastrophes that happen, you will be covered. So talking about landlord insurance, basically what we try to do is protect your asset. We do units 1 to 4 as a dwelling, so we can do up to a 4-plex. We'll cover your outbuildings, your fences, do loss of rent. So if you have a kitchen fire and your tenant has to move out, you're still collecting your income during that time. And of course, we'll do some liability and personal liability insurance in case you were ever sued or had an injury on your property.
Landlord insurance, beyond those basics that Michael outlined for you, the landlord insurance policy needs to be set up properly. A lot of people do it wrong. We do it right. First off, we not only will provide coverage for the structure, we're going to give you a hedge against not having enough coverage. The hedge is you have 125% of the dwelling limit. As an example, you have $300,000 on the structure. You're really getting in our policy $360,000 of coverage. So if we don't have enough in the basic policy limits, we'll make sure you're fully covered in that way. We also want to cover your loss of income. Rental income is very important to you. That's why you buy these properties. It's an asset that's developing income and appreciation as you go along. If you have a bad fire, Michael mentioned the kitchen fire, you want to make sure that you have rent coming in. So that's what the rental income is for. Note to self, the rental income is not going to cover you if you have a tenant that flakes out on you. That's called property management. We highly recommend you use professional property managers.
So when we put together your landlord policy, we're trying to protect all of your assets, not just to replace your dwelling, but we give you extended replacement coverage, which gives you an additional 25% of your coverage A. So when your costs run over, we will have you covered. We also make sure that you have the rent ready, so it'll cover your dishwasher, your stove, items like that if there was ever a loss. Do the loss of rental income that we talked about. If there's a kitchen fire, we make sure you have that coverage. Usually we recommend about a year's worth of rent as your coverage. Then we'll also make sure that you have coverage for your property manager, liability coverage. The number one key to a landlord policy is a property manager. They will be there to see what's going on inside your home. They'll know if you have a bad tenant. They'll know if there's a water leak. They're really there to take care of your asset. And finally, we get down to deductibles, and we will work with you on your deductible to get you the best rate.
The kinds of claims that are typically covered with a landlord policy is fire. That's your big one. And for those of you who are purchasing properties in the Midwest, wind and hail is huge to you, and we cover that as well. That's on your basic policy. Water damage is your next big claim. That's where you have an appliance break or the pipe underneath your sink decides to explode and have water going all over the kitchen floor. That's going to be a lot of damage to your property. That is covered by these policies. A lot more than that is covered, but those are really the most common kinds of claims that you will see as a property owner.
Okay, landlord insurance, what is covered? Number one is liability. You want to make sure you have at least $500,000 in liability coverage, and also an umbrella policy that will give you at least $1 million of additional liability coverage. What this does for you is if your tenant walks out and the sprinklers ran all night and they slip and fall on the grass, break their arm or their collarbone, whatever happens, you will be covered in case they sue you for that. So it's super important. And then also we have wrongful eviction, which is another reason to have a property manager. You will not run into this situation, but if you're managing yourself, which I don't recommend, you would have this coverage for wrongful eviction. I wouldn't recommend managing it yourself because you can run into so many problems. A property manager will show up at least once every 6 months, walk your property, they'll look at your tenants. They also do background checks on your tenants. When you manage yourself, you tend to let people in that aren't necessarily the best renters. Also, you're not going to probably be in the state that your rental property's in, so you're not going to be able to be there when it's vacant. Your property manager can rent it for you, make sure you have a good tenant, make sure your property's not being destroyed. You do have a claim on your landlord policy, a liability claim. The insurance company is going to defend that for you versus you having to defend yourself in court.
We've got some tips for what we think is a really successful insurance program. The very first item is have professional property management.
You want to always inform your agent if you've changed lenders. A lot of times you have your lender set up to make the payment on your policy. Unfortunately, if you don't let your insurance agent know, we will be billing the wrong lender and your policy will cancel. So it's very important that you stay in contact with your insurance agent.
This is another reason why, guess what? You want professional property management. If you are in California and you have a property in Texas and they have a freeze coming and your property is vacant, you have to have that house completely winterized. If it is not winterized and the pipes explode and you have a ice angel in your living room creating all kinds of damage, there's no coverage unless your home has been winterized.
You know, another good tip is that when you have a property manager, they're going to know when your property is vacant and for how long. Once your property is vacant for 60 consecutive days, you no longer have insurance coverage. So we can actually do a policy for you that is a vacancy policy, costs a little bit more, but you'll have the protection for your asset. And then once you get a renter in there, we'll be able to put you back on your regular landlord policy. But if you let the policy cancel out after 60 days, you will have no coverage for fire, theft, vandalism. Basically, you don't have any coverage. And as Stan mentioned earlier, you want to do the extended replacement coverage. So if you have $300,000 in coverage, you get the extended extra 25%. If anything goes wrong, your asset will be put back together properly.
And use higher deductibles across the board on all of your insurance. The overall savings will more than pay for a deductible each year if you were to have an event, and you're not going to have an event every year. Save money, use deductibles strategically.
Yeah, exactly. And also make sure your tenants get a renter's policy. Renter's policies are less than $200 a year, and they give your tenant liability coverage, and it also covers all of their personal property. You're not responsible for their personal property, and it's very important that they get a renter's policy. Once again, if you have a property management company like Marshall Reddick, they will make sure that there is a renter's policy for each and every renter that they put into one of your units.
Why use our agency, Huggins Dreckman Insurance Agency in Southern California? Well, we're nationwide, and so we can handle your rental property coverages all over the country. We research each property as much as possible. If you're buying a property that's ever had a tenant in there and been listed on Zillow, or it's been for sale recently, we look at those pictures that are online, making sure we're using the proper information to develop a replacement cost value. We just don't throw up a number and say, hey, this is good because it's so much per square foot. We actually take the time to research it and develop a proper replacement cost estimate. And our Safeco and Travelers programs are primarily what we use. We use several companies, but again, Safeco and Travelers are our best programs, we believe. They are the two leaders in this industry for rental property insurance. So you can't go wrong with either one of those. Both have outstanding coverage, great claim service, and they are also nationwide.
Get a hold of Huggins Dreckman Insurance as we answer all those questions you have. We'll go over your landlord policy, go over your homeowners or auto, whatever it is that we're working on, and we'll go in depth with you. A lot of people have so many questions they don't ask their insurance agent. One of the reasons we do this is to educate our people. Even if you're going to go to a different insurance agent, we want you to understand what you're getting and why you're getting it. We want to make sure your asset is properly insured and not just having a policy on it to make the bank happy.